Welcome to the Taking a Breath podcast with Parker Mays.
Today I'm excited because I have a good friend of mine joining me, Gavin Masumiya. He's a mindset coach who uniquely blends his love for public speaking and coaching to help millennial leaders maximize their creativity, access flow state, and experience the freedom of their own self-expression. So Gavin, I'm excited to have you here today. I think we're going to be able to bring a lot of value to our young leaders that are listening. And so would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah. Well, thank you first off for that introduction,
Yes, sir.
Parker. And yes, as he said it, I'm very passionate about my mindset. Big part of that was just growing up. I had a lot of insecurities. And so for anybody that is tuning in, if there's any insecurities you have, particularly around like how you can communicate and really express yourself, I was that shy kid sitting in that red carpet square in school. I had blue braces, a really big overbite. I would actually mumble because I didn't want people to really see my braces and call me a nerd, which was so ironic because actually school was rather hard for me, and I had to really bust and really exert a lot of effort just to get a little above average grades. And so just developing that sense of work ethic earlier on, but also having the insecurity when I took my braces off in 10th grade, I would still mumble because we develop habits. And that's one thing that I'm very passionate about. It's not just the mindset and flow state, but how we use our voice. And a lot of our voice is really constructed environmentally based on these insecurities that we've had, just like my mumbling because I wanted to cover my blue braces that became a habit even after my braces got removed. And so some things that we just do because it's what we've been doing. And that's really the sole purpose of the brain, to conserve as much energy as possible. And that feeds into mindset. And so peeling back the layers of the onions through voice is one of my infinite games.
Shoo. So already just 60 seconds in, we're hitting all these good topics that I'm excited to dive into. Habits, our vocal habits, brain function, insecurities, intentions around conversations, all of these things, creating the space. I'm excited to dive in with you today. The first thing that I want to touch on is because how I got introduced to you is through a platform that you host called Flowfam, which is specifically about teaching people to access their flow state. So I want to start off just by giving people a little bit of context on that part of your life. So can you tell us a little bit about what was kind of the inspiration behind Flowfam, which is this now virtual community, and what is flow state?
Great. So I love these two questions. So the first one is basically Flowfam is a consolidation of my love for personal development and coaching, and all of that is naturally infused, where I use freestyle as a vehicle to express truth, as a vehicle to tap into the subconscious mind to what it is that we truly desire, what we truly are bumping up against, and using that, these vulnerabilities as a connecting thread with other people that are there. So Flowfam is a way where strangers can come together and really feel like family. And so it's all about the space that's being held in a place of non-judgment and empathy that's coming into the space that I really am keen on continuing to reinforce. And so that's one. It's basically through my public speaking, my coaching experience, being shy, growing up, feeds into it. So never discount your pain. It can transform into very powerful purposes in life. And usually these memories when we were really younger, before we really had the ability to discern, before we really had a value system, they can really lead the rest of our lives and make really big executive decisions in our lives without us really knowing it. And we're basing it off of these childhood constructs of the first time we got reprimanded, the first time that we got our heart broken, and we start to sculpt our future based on these past, quote unquote, like traumas or negative experiences. And Flowfam in a way helps to peel back the layers of the onions of those insecurities that we have, and we can explore it in a playful, fun, but also very deep way.
That's good. And I wanted to clarify, this is something that I meant to include in that was for audiences, we've got audiences coming from all different backgrounds. Is there a specific religious component of Flowfam or flow state in general? Or can this be something that is benefited for anyone from religious backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, that type of question?
That is great question right there. No, it is not it's not exclusive. I have done Flowfam inside of a Christian church one time with people this was a men's circle from 40 to 60, early 60s. I've did this with children and their father, a father and a daughter who was 17 years old. And so, yeah, did it with my friend's son who was 7 years old. So like, this is something like across different religious backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. No, this is something that is accessible to anyone.
And the only reason I asked that is I want people to just have that openness going into it, that, I'm not excluded from this group. So being in this space, and the next thing I want to talk about is this idea of creating the space, or creating a container, I think is kind of your phrasing, but
Yes.
talking about how to create this authentic space for us as people who want to develop deeper relationships and work better with the teams and our coworkers. For you, any tips on creating that space in our daily lives and in the relationships that we interact with?
Absolutely. So how I open up the space is that, well, there's two big things that come into play. First one is simple. Everyone is basically taught this. If you do some type of coaching certification program, and it's easily applicable, is acknowledgement and validation. And so when you can really get good at this is actually a superpower that people can acquire. Acknowledging people's situations, what they might be going through, and validating the emotions that they might be experiencing, even if they don't overtly say it.
Wow.
So this does build a skill and an acumen around learning to read between the lines.
Yes.
About what people, not what they might be saying, but what is it underneath it. Because people might just say that they're fine, but they really don't feel fine.
Wow.
And so if you can jump the gun and be willing to be wrong in acknowledging how somebody might be feeling too, is really helpful. So I usually open up the space, I'm just saying like, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out. There's so many other things that you could have rather been doing. You could do that with somebody else that you're just on the phone with. And so it's just acknowledging people's time and respecting that they're choosing to interact with you is really powerful. And a second thing is being clear on whatever this interaction is, or whatever you're up to. What is your intention for that? And if there's somebody else involved, say it off the bat. Like, say it off the bat what the intention is. And that's really powerful because it gets people to that they can actually be on a similar page if they agree with it. And if they don't, you can address it right from the jump. That's really powerful. And it's actually one of the flow triggers, which is to have a clear goal. And when people have a clear goal, you can flow within it, which provides this sense of structured freedom. And an intention creates the structure for you to dance inside of. And that's really powerful when you're dealing with other human beings.
I love both of those things. So the first was acknowledgement and validation, realizing, okay, people could be anywhere, but they're choosing to be here present in this moment. I love that. And then the second thing, intention, setting those clear goals, setting the clear intention for wherever this could go, and knowing that it's going to be different for each person individually. I love that. When we're talking about, so we're creating this space, we're in this moment, and even if it's just a phone call with someone, like that example you mentioned, and we're just here to have a quick conversation, how can we, now that we've acknowledged, created the validation, and set the intention, is there a way that we can continue to basically create the openness and the vulnerability to share in that space?
Yes. I would say the first, and the way that I always go about it in these side of these Flowfam spaces, and also inside of all of my coaching sessions, I would just say in interactions in general, it's so important for me is that I'm illustrating it, that I'm the one demonstrating it, leading by example. By virtue of my demonstration, people try that on and they're like, oh yeah. So my buddy Gavin, he said to me, life is like a cup of coffee. And it's because I was leading by example with it. And if I get really deep into it and I really use this metaphor as a way of, this is really how life can be, and I start creating a positioning around that, and it's like, you don't really have to fill it up with copy, but we tend to fill things up with the things that people tell us to fill things up with, when this is really a cup. You could fill it up with anything that you want. You don't have to be just tied down by a construct based on what your family said about you. So now I'm opening this cup of coffee into really look at your identity structures in life, the intersections of your cultural conditioning, your religious conditioning, your familial conditioning, your social conditioning, enter that into really really do you want to pour into your cup? And by doing that, it gives people like, oh, you could really get deep with this.
Yeah.
It's not just a cup of coffee. It's not just life is like a box of chocolates. You never go what you're going to get. You can elaborate even further. But even that, I didn't know where that was going to go. And so there's a lot of trust that's involved. So Flowfam is very trust building as well. And being vulnerable is a trust building factor. So lead first.
I love that. And so in talking about leadership, there's a couple of things you mentioned there that I want to ask about. But the first one is I know that in the conversation of leadership, one of the big ideas for you is this idea of discernment. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that. There was a topic or an idea that you mentioned one time of this subjective scale. And would love. Do you know what I'm? Yeah, and I would love for you to kind of break that down for me and share with the listeners as well.
Yeah. So this whole subjective scale, you just think about them scaling questions like on a scale from 1 to 10. And I find that really powerful. It's a very common thing that you'll see in coaching because it's really effective. In when it comes to like discerning, it's just like you're kind of like weighing options so that you can make the best, most effective choice for yourself. Uh, that I would say like kind of discerning, like on the fence, it would be a 5. And I tell people in a world where 5 doesn't exist. Once you just choose a side, choose a side, choose a position. Don't be on the fence. Don't be indifferent. I kind of like this. It's not true or false. It's just something that I subscribe to is that, the opposite of love isn't necessarily hate. Oh, what if it was actually indifference that you don't even know, that you're not even going to choose a side?
Wow.
And if you're not even going to, well, you know what, I'm down with whatever. Let's just go with the flow. And this is where it's interesting. So I'm not all about just like, oh, just go with the flow with whatever's going to happen. No, you're constantly going to be weighing things based on what your values are, especially what your core values are. Where you have labeled your core values or not. Your values are going to dictate most, if not all of the decisions that you make. And if you value fun more than courage, for instance, you might just go for something and just have a really good time, but really there was something else that you really wanted to do that might have been a little more scary. That might have been like, you know what, I don't want to hang out with you right now because I have something more important for me. I have to make this phone call with a family member and I don't want to use that because that would be a distraction for me. And so I think really being clear on where your values are and the hierarchy of that, it will make discernment a lot easier.
Man, that is so the biggest thing there with core values is I remember you sharing this idea of the layers of why. I know it's something that a lot of people have talked about, but there is this idea that how can we get to the core of the core, our deepest vulnerability or insecurity. So I would love for you to talk through that because I had some questions for you there.
Absolutely. So I'll also do it through an example as well and
Awesome.
let you know that I did not create this. This is something that you can hear everywhere. Dean Graciosi is where I got it actually from in his Millionaire Success Habits. And he basically says that you're going to take a question. And let's just say for me, one of my coaches a couple of years ago asked me like, why do you coach? That's the first level. Why do you coach? I love the feeling. I love the feeling when I'm in coaching. I feel like I'm able to really access my zone of genius where I don't even know where the questions are really coming from. It's a place where I really experience flow. Why is it? So he's like, okay, great. So why that? Why is it important for you to really follow your flow and do things that you're naturally really good at? Because it's not only is it easier for me, I develop a lot faster. It's something that naturally juices me. It's something that I call anabolic energy. Why is it important for you to follow things where it's very anabolic for you? Right. And he kept going, why? And usually it goes into, for me, it was like, because I remember being on that carpet square when I was really young. And then my teacher asked me, like, Gavin, why don't you really speak up? Oh, Gavin, he doesn't really say anything. Oh, and another girl's like him, Gavin, you're ugly. You have big ears. You have Dumbo ears. You have blue braces. And I wanted to speak up and be like, shut up. Or I wanted to say something, but I didn't. And I quietly just kept to myself, harboring these resentments where I was really like, I really wanted to yell back or to stand up for myself, but I didn't. And for that, it took me so many years to decondition that, to really decondition that. And you know what? Actually, my voice is worthy of being heard. And it wasn't until ninth grade when I met Ariana, my basketball coach, Daniel Fallon, rest in peace, died of cancer a little over a year ago. Those people who encouraged me to speak up, that I am the leader, to be the captain of the basketball team, even when I didn't realize that I was capable of that. They planted a seed. And that's why I realized, looking back, that that's what I do as a coach. I plant seeds in people that they might not even fully realize inside of themselves. And to realize these people that think that they're wallflowers, that their voice is discounted and not worthy of being heard, it is. And maybe you just did not have a space or a mentor or somebody who helped you to shed light on that. But I believe that everyone's voice is worthy of being heard when they really get in tune to what is it? What is it that you really are compelled to want to speak about? But through your speaking, you're being something as you're speaking it. And that's why I'm so passionate about voice. It's not just teaching people how to speak more dynamically. It's about using that as a vehicle to honestly emote as you are speaking. And it is the energy that's moving the words. Usually those whys go back to moments in time, painful moments, or really moments where you've had a breakthrough. And it's because of that that kept me on this role to where now I'm helping people to unleash themselves, to express themselves more powerfully, confidently, and effectively. Because I remember not having any of that.
Man, I part of the reason, part of what I love, not only about what you just said, but about how you said it, is it's so clear that your why is so in line with what you're doing.
Yeah.
It comes through. Like the energy is different when you're talking about creating, right, this space for people, because it's so in line with what you want and where you've seen the benefit over the years. And so for me, yeah, just for anyone listening, like highly recommend just rewinding to that part, because I felt like that was a place where you were so focused and in line and energized by that why. I love that.
Yes. And the amazing thing about that, thank you for pointing that out, is that how many times I've said this?
Yeah.
Right? Like people, what's my why or this,
Yeah.
that. And you know how many times I've said this, but it doesn't go away. And so that's the thing where, like, when people get attuned to their why, that's why Tony Robbins, you see him, he said the thing tens of thousands of times about Thanksgiving Day. His father was so ashamed when a stranger dropped off a turkey in front of their house, and he rejected it because he saw that was a disgrace to him as a man, and he left his family.
Yeah.
But Tony never forgot that, because he's like, strangers care, right? Strangers care. And that was a catalyst, an ignite moment, a moment in time where you make a decision or something came into you that changed the trajectory of your life. Those moments, like, really, yeah, think back at what some of those painful moments, because those painful moments could have been and could be ignite moments in your life that crystallize your why.
I love that. And I've heard you say that before, that idea of ignite moments, where it's like this, such a powerful, impactful moment that it absolutely like reshapes the way you're thinking. Am I explaining that right? Did you want to elaborate a little bit more
Yeah,
on that
pretty much.
concept?
And once again, I didn't create that moment. I
Okay.
was a contributing author for this book called Ignite Your Life for Men.
Okay.
And our chapters were based on what was an ignite moment in your life that changed it, that led you on to what you now believe your mission to be. And so, yeah, ignite moments are basically a moment in time where something occurred, and based on that, it changed you. It changed where you're like, maybe I should start expressing myself more. After Ariana said that, it's not like I just was unleashed and I started talking to all the women in the world and I started raising my hand in classroom. No, it was a slow roll of learning to speak up a little more around my friendships, of learning to be like, hey, what if you did this a little more? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, teacher. Can you say that again?
Yeah.
A slow roll of that. But it was an ignite moment, because it was like, actually something that comes out of my mouth actually can make a difference in somebody else's life. What if somebody else in this classroom doesn't understand it either, and they're just not raising their hand? Maybe my not knowing could be a contribution to another student in this class.
Man.
Right?
Insane. One thing that I love is the mindset shift of like, yeah, either even if it's just, hey, I think I have this question, it's likely that someone else has the same question. Like just those little things where you realize like you give yourself permission to say it's okay for me to take this step outside of my comfort zone. And whether it's a selfish reason of I need this or I think somebody else needs this, whatever it is, giving yourself that permission, I think, is that incredibly valuable first step, right? One thing that I know is something that you've talked about is this idea of habits, and I think this is kind of that last topic I wanted to touch on. Of for you, when did you start working on your habits, and what are some of those things that you've really tried to like consistently perform on?
Great, great. Oh, I love that. And I'll break it off into two different tiers. So
Okay.
habits, everyone probably knows, you could already intellectually, like habits are important because behaviorally they're going to change one's life.
Yeah.
Now, I like to subscribe to what James Clear says in Atomic Habits. He's one of the leading edge experts when it comes to breaking down the mechanics of habits and how it works. And he has great strategies in that book, which I won't get into here. But he says why habits are so important because they sculpt what you believe about yourself,
Oh wow.
right? So for instance, Kobe Bryant, he was one of the arguably he's one of the greatest, was, rest in peace, was one of the greatest basketball players of all time. NBA history. There's probably like one of the greatest. That's probably not even arguable. He's probably one of the greatest right there. But he made a shift when he retired. And so if he just stuck to his identity that I am a great basketball player, but he wanted to get into movies, that may not translate. But what if his identity might have been, I'm a high performer in whatever I do. And I seek the best mentorship possible. That's why he reached out to Pixar to learn really about the art of storytelling. He didn't reach out to just somebody. He reached out to the best of the best. And yeah, because of his stature and everything, he was able to get that kind of call. But it was also his mentality that got him to that place, because he had a summer camp where he didn't score any points when he was in his teenage years. And he used that pain point as a catalyst to know like, hey, you know what? They're older than me. Even if I go every day for 1 year, I'm not going to get better than them. But give me 2 years, then I'll be able to compete with them. And he learned to just add to his tool belt. And that's an identity. And his behaviors fed in and reinforced that identity more. That's why habits are so important. One of them that I've really been taking on a lot more is meditation.
Okay.
I do a specific meditation called Joe Dispenza's meditation, and I jump anywhere between some of his 45-minute ones to his 75-minute meditations. And why that has been so influential, I've had my biggest months in business in December, November, and also October. And I realized like, what was one of the biggest things that I've done, like consistently, behaviorally, was, I'm doing these meditations every day. And his whole notion is about, you want it to impact your subconscious mind, which is ultimately what a habit is going to do, because you're exerting willpower in the beginning to sit down and meditate and to be like, oh my God, this is so long. Well, I should just stop at 30 minutes because 30 minutes is longer than probably most people anyways, right? But it's just like, no, sit down. There's something that you just did. It's okay, and and just sitting down to use my willpower for it, it becomes easier, not day by day. Some days are actually harder, but like month to month, it becomes easier.
Yeah.
Every 30 days, it becomes a little easier each time. And I exert less willpower. So that means I'm actually training my nervous system to get used to sitting for this extended period of time, because it's actually giving me something. And so that's one of my biggest habits that I do.
Love that. It's just something about being more in tune to your body and your mind that obviously is working really well. So things that I'm gonna really work to implement. May ask some follow-up questions there down the road as I start to implement, for sure. I appreciate you sharing everything today. I've just learned so much. Every conversation I have with you, I feel like I get so locked into everything you're saying. I want to give you an opportunity to share where's the best place for people to connect with you, find more about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always go onto my website, gavinmasumiya.com. And if you want to go strictly around Flowfam, you can go to flowfam.com. I just launched that website that's going to continue just being branched out more and more and more. And then When it comes to just, if you want to hit me up on the DMs, you can get me on Instagram, also on Facebook, on LinkedIn. It's Gavin Masumiya. Gavin Masumiya on all of them. You can find me.
Perfect. I love it. Awesome. And we'll tag him in any content that we post from this and in the show notes as well. You can find his website. So Gavin, I appreciate you again. And for everyone listening, check Gavin out. If you're interested in the Flowfam stuff that he and I were talking about, I've actively been able to participate and would love for you to reach out for more of that. I just love this conversation. I hope it helped you to be more in tune with your mind, with your body, and the things that you're going to be setting your intentions for the coming weekend and week. I appreciate everyone listening and look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Taking a Breath podcast with Parker Mays.